Okay, so I just got finished working on getting the rail, the tongues, or the mortises, the tenons, the tongues, the tenons, however you want to call them for these joints. And I fit them up, fit the rails into the stiles. And when you're done, you should get a nice firm structure like this. Okay. So we're going to be doing our center panel next. So just to give you an idea what this looks like. The first couple rails, so I think I have an issue with my table saw where the height knob kind of rolls on its own a little bit and drags. So my first door ended up, the tongues or the tenons ended up being a little too narrow. So that one's kind of a little loose. It'll be fine once I glue it up and all that stuff. But this is ideal. It's nice and snug and firm, and you can kind of move it around. And I can take it over to the cabinet and make sure it's the right size and all that stuff. But if you do get one where you're a little loose and things still sort of fit up, but it's a little wobbly, don't lose heart. It's fine. We're going to be assembling this with wood glue, and the wood glue will kind of take up that little extra space on either side of those tongues, and it'll still end up being a nice, firm, strong door. But for practical purposes, this is what you're shooting for. So let's get started on our center panel. So now that we have our doors pretty much done, at least the door frame, we're ready to move on to our center panels. And our center panels are going to be pretty easy, and we're going to go ahead and switch back our blade and our table saw to the regular table saw blade. And what I've done is I've already cut out the center panel parts way back when we cut all our parts out. And this is just a 1/2 inch thick piece of birch plywood. And what I'm going to do is I actually dimensioned it so it overlaps both the rails and the stiles by about a 1/4 inch all the way around. Well, you may be asking, well, we cut these grooves about 3/8 of an inch deep, so why wouldn't we cut it a 1/4 inch deep? Well, you could if you wanted to. That'd be fine, and I've done that before in the past. But for this one, we're going to actually insert a product into these grooves that will help kind of keep this center panel centered. And if we just put the panel in here with either the 3/8 or a 1/4 inch groove, the panel is going to want to kind of slide down due to gravity, maybe move around a little bit. So we're going to try to lock it in place, but still allow it to expand and contract with the seasons, if this board would need that. So what I've done is just kind of make sure that I placed the panel on here, drew some centering lines, just kind of traced it around on the first door, just to make sure that when this was cut out, it still kind of matches dimensionally what I expected it to be. And it does. It shows about a 1/4 inch on each board. So we're good there. So what I'm going to do is set my table saw blade now, and I'm going to remove about a 1/4 inch down from the back all the way around, and then a 1/4 inch in thickness by standing it on edge. So I'm going to run it flat all the way through, and I'll show you how to do that. And then I will stand it on edge and remove it. So we'll have a little 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch step all the way around on the back side, and allow us to slide this panel into our groove. So let's take this over to the table saw and get started. Okay, so I've got my regular table saw back in here. This is the 80 tooth count blade we've been using. I've got my center panel ready to go. I've set the fence distance, so what I'm going to be removing with the blade will be about a 1/4 inch, and I've also got the height to a 1/4 inch. To set the height, I just lined up the blade to half the height of the panel thickness. And for the fence setting, since my blade is 1/8 of an inch, I actually set the fence to 1/8 of an inch. So together with the blade and the gap, it should be about a 1/4 inch. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to push this through on all 4 sides, keeping the center panel butted against the fence, and that'll create a nice little cut on the back side for us. And I figured out the back side from the front side just by looking at the panel and figuring out which side looks paintable and better, just higher quality, and it's this one. So I'm going to put my hearing protection on, and let's get going. Okay, so now I've got my center panel cut, the groove cut, that I made that first cut on the back. I've adjusted my fence so I can run this vertically through here. All right, so I have this fence set now to 1/4 inch. All right, so let's go ahead and make this second cut. So I just spent the last few minutes doing a dry fit, fitting up the center panel and making some tweaks to the center panel. I had to actually make some of the grooves a little further into the board to get it to fit up right. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like. So we'll do a dry fit to make sure it fits and it's aligned. You always want to do that before you go ahead and glue it. So I've got my tighter door here. And what I'm going to do is pick the side I think looks the best. They all kind of look the same, so I'm going to place it on edge, and we'll slide the center panel in. Make sure it fits okay. Should go down nice and easy. Okay. Make sure those joints are tight. And then what we'll do is put our other stile on. Okay, get it started on both ends first, and then push down. Okay, and we'll give it some English here. Hit it a little bit. All right. Okay, so I'll need to make some fine-tune adjustments when I go to glue this up to make sure that the joints get tight. We'll use clamps to pull together, obviously. But if it's not lining up here because it's too far in, that's fine. What you want to be aware of, if one of these rail boards or stile boards is sitting too far out, too far up, and you really just can't bring it closer together because it's hitting the center panel, that's something we want to correct now before we go to glue it up, and that's what dry fit's for. So I just did a dry fit before this, so I know this looks okay and fits fine. So this door panel, this door frame and assembly is ready for glue up. So what I'm looking for is see how it sits in the back. Okay, so I've got a groove, a little bit of space on either side of the door panel. It's nice and tight at the top and the bottom, and it's got a groove about 1/8 of an inch gap on either side, and that's fine. That's just from messing around trying to get it to fit in there. As long as it's even and square, I don't really care if there's a gap there. But if you want to completely eliminate the gap, then you would just kind of start out with a center panel that's a little tighter than what you need and start removing material and doing dry fit test fits to make sure everything works well. But I'm totally fine with having a little bit of gap there, and it's something you would see when you open the door. And again, that's the back. It's nice and tight in the top and the bottom. Groove's okay. Front looks really good. So we'll go ahead and I'll show you how we glue this up. If you have bigger gaps and you're still okay with that, and just, again, there's nothing wrong with having a nice gap all the way around, or if your gap gets too big and the center panel really starts to move around or slide around in there, you can use something called Spaceballs. So not named after the movie, I don't think. They are little rubber pellets, and what you do is you actually insert them into the door and rail grooves before you put the center panel in. And what they do is they compress a little bit against the center panel, but they provide something, a little cushion to take up that extra space if there's any, and it will automatically center the panel for you by having something in there pushing from either end. So I didn't put them in this door. You didn't see me do that. I'm not going to. I'm okay with this one. I did put them in this door. And again, this is my loose one, so this one wasn't great to show. But on the back, let me see what a pain it is to work with loose doors. All right. So on the back, you can see that it's got a gap also, but that gap on either side is actually dead even because of those space balls are in there. So I could jam them in there if I wanted to. I'm not going to. But again, I'm tight here at the top and the bottom. So I'm pretty good with these. It just depends on your level of perfection, what you like, what you're comfortable with. But we're going to go ahead and make a little space to glue and clamp these up, and we'll show you how to do that.